I learned how to do hand embroidery a long time ago when I was a little girl. My mama taught me how to do it, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing, but I got away from it for quite some time. So I thought now would be the perfect time to work on those skills, learn some new stitches and things like that, and I thought it would be a good idea to share some of those things with my viewers. I thought some of you might like to learn how to embroider, so today I have included some basic supplies that you need to get started, some tips and tricks and things that I have learned along the way. And embroidery is just a very relaxing handicraft to me. It's something that you can do just sitting on your couch watching TV while you have your feet up, things like that. It doesn't require a lot of energy, and I hope you enjoy today's video. It is a technique that will add a lot of beauty and detail to your crafting and your projects. You can personalize your items and create some beautiful gifts to give to family and friends. Thank you guys for stopping by Lavender and Lace. I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my viewers that come and see me each week, and hello if you are new here. Thank you for stopping by today. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this content, and let's get started with today's video. So to get started with embroidery, you do need a few basic supplies. You will need an embroidery hoop in whatever size that you want for your project. I would probably go with this medium size one just when you are getting started. That's a good size for your fabric and your pattern. And you also want to think about whether you want a wooden frame like these, or they have the bamboo ones, or a plastic hoop as well. I would go with the wooden frames if you want to display your finished product and hang that on a wall. So those are just a few things to keep in mind when you are choosing the hoops for your project. Of course, you will want some embroidery needles. These are super tiny and can be a little bit hard to work with and get that thread through there, but a lot of kits come with a needle threader to help you with that. You'll want some scissors to cut your thread that you are working with. And of course, you will want your thread, or otherwise known as embroidery floss. This comes in lots of different colors, and it will come on a skein like this. And they also have the numbers on them, so you can buy the correct color if you run out and you will need more for your project. Those numbers just make that easy to reference, and you'll be able to get more to finish your project. So you'll buy them like this, and then I like to wrap them around these little cards. You can find these also in like your fiber art section at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Amazon, anywhere like that. And I also like to write the number of my color that I'm using, and these cards just make it easy to unwrap these and cut whatever length that you want to work with your project. And of course, you will need some patterns, and these are some that I have had on hand forever. So these are really old. I'm not sure if you can find these specific ones anymore, but you can find patterns on Amazon. You can find them at Walmart and Hobby Lobby. And of course, you will need some fabric, and this is just a piece of white that I picked up from Dollar Tree. You will want to use a lighter fabric. You can use darker fabrics. You do have some tips on the back of your patterns that tell you how you can print on to dark colored fabrics. I like these patterns that you can pick up already with the image printed and ready to transfer. They also have your stamping instructions on the back. Just gives you tips on what you need to do for your particular project. It will tell you how you need to prep your fabric and get ready to iron on your transfer. And it will give you tips on how you can actually use these transfers on darker fabric as well. And it tells you that you want to test a transfer for each pattern before you work with it. And these patterns aren't just for embroidery. You can use them for fabric painting, quilting, wearable art, needlepoint, a lot of different fiber arts. You can use these patterns. You also have the option to create your own patterns. All you have to do is pick up some of this tracing paper and some of these hot iron transfer pencils. You can find these on Amazon, or I picked mine up at Hobby Lobby. And you can print out anything from your printer and then just simply trace that onto your tracing paper with your pencils. And you do want to test whatever fabric that you are working with, because I did a project with these and I printed off some snowflakes to embroider, and I was not able to wash out all of this pencil mark from my fabric. So be sure that you do test these on whatever fabric that you are working with before you print your transfer. And if your design does have a specific placement that you want for your finished project, just be sure that you pay attention to the direction that you print that onto your tracing paper. If you want it to be the opposite way, you want to mirror your image before you iron that on to your fabric of choice. Now that you know the basic supplies that you need for an embroidery project, I wanted to go ahead and show you how to get your fabric ready and also how to stamp one of the pattern transfers. So this is that fabric that I got from Dollar Tree. I did wash it and I also ironed out all the wrinkles. So this is ready for the next steps. So you do want to go ahead and place down whatever hoop that you have decided to work with, and this is the 6-inch one. And you want to just go ahead and cut a square of your fabric that's going to be big enough to kind of overhang your hoop, because you do want to pull your fabric tight. You don't want to have any slack or anything like that in your fabric. That just makes it a lot harder to do your stitches. And I'm sorry guys if that camera is shaking a little bit. I got a new crafting table for Christmas and it's not too stable, so I'll try not to shake the camera. So once you have your fabric cut out, now you can get it ready to stamp on your pattern. Once you choose the pattern that you want, if you're going with a store-bought pre-stamped one, you just want to find whatever you are going to be working with, and you will cut that out to fit your fabric. And this one is actually a lot bigger than I thought it was, so I may have to look for a different pattern just to show you guys how you want to stamp that onto your fabric. So yeah, none of these are going to fit on what I want to do. So let's just look through what else I have and go from there. Okay, so I finally found one of my patterns that will fit inside my hoop and the size of fabric that I decided to work with, just to show you guys how you want to get your image printed. So you want to put your image face down and try to make sure that you have it centered on your fabric, but of course in the end you can always just trim up your edges to even everything out. And you want to pin down your pattern just so that it doesn't move around when you are ironing that on. So I'm just using some straight pins to help me do that, trying to hold that down and not have any wrinkles in the paper. And try to get your pins not super close to the design, because that will sometimes hinder your iron from going where it needs to be. Okay, I have everything pinned down, so let's go over to my ironing board and get our pattern transferred. So I had my iron preheating while I was pinning my pattern down, and you be sure that you don't use any steam or any moisture when you are transferring your pattern like this. You want to move your iron kind of slowly back and forth for about 5 seconds. I like to just push that around mainly with the tip of my iron, just so I can get exactly where I want to on my pattern. And I do like to lift that up every once in a while just to make sure that everything is printing. Sometimes I do have to go back over an area just to make sure that I get my pattern printed dark enough. Now that we have our pattern stamped, we can remove the pins and see how well that it's stamped on our fabric. And I did check it, that you guys saw, just to make sure everything was printing well before I put my iron up. So it looks pretty good. We do have some areas that are a little bit lighter than others, but I can still see them, so that shouldn't make stitching too hard. So once you have that on your fabric, oh, and side note, you can use these again. Sometimes they just start fading, so once you don't get a good print, it's time to just throw your patterns away. But once you have that printed, you can go ahead and get that put into your hoop, and you do want to center it as best as you can. Like I mentioned before, you can trim up your fabric, and if this is a piece that you're going to display, more than likely you're going to trim all this off and just glue that edge on the underside of your hoop anyway. But for now, I will try to get that centered as best as I can. And this up here just allows you to loosen and tighten your hoop. And you do want to pull your fabric as tight as you can get it. So you just keep tightening that, pushing that top hoop down, and pulling your fabric until it is extremely tight. And again, this just makes stitching a whole lot easier. If you have loose fabric, you're just not able to get your stitches nice and neat. So let's see. It kind of sounds like the top of a drum when you have your fabric as tight as you need it. So that is how you stamp on a embroidery pattern and add it to your hoop. Now that we have our pattern transferred, I wanted to show you guys 3 basic stitches: a satin stitch, a back stitch, and a French knot. And those are the ones that I chose specifically to use for this pattern. And once you guys learn a lot of your stitches, you can do whatever you want to on your patterns. But I wanted to show you those together and how that looks on a completed project. And once you are ready to start your stitching, you just want to go ahead and pull off a pretty long length of your thread that you are going to be using. You don't want to get this too long or it will knot up on you. And I actually opted to use just a regular sewing needle for this. The eye is just a little bit larger than an embroidery needle. I still had trouble threading this one because I could not find my needle threader. And I did decide to use 6 strands of my embroidery floss for this project. That just gives me more pronounced lines, and I think it adds a little bit more decorative touch to your project. It just helps you see everything a little bit better, your design that you are stitching. And once you have your needle threaded, you just want to knot one end of your thread before you start on your project. The first stitch I want to show you is the satin stitch, and this is the one that you want to use if you want to fill in a lot of your design, and it will just give you a lot of color on your project. So you just start on the line that you are working on, and then you will go straight across to the opposite line, and then you will come up where you put your needle in. I hope that makes sense. And go back on the opposite side. So you're just working back and forth, trying to keep your thread as close together as possible so you don't have any gaps that would allow you to see your fabric. So you just continue doing that, going up and down, keeping your line straight as possible or whatever it is on your pattern that you are working with, and just continue all the way across, around, whatever your pattern is until you have that completely filled in. I use the satin stitch for the top set of wings as well as the body of my butterfly. The next stitch is a French knot, and this will be printed on your pattern as a circle, and you can do this a couple of different ways. The first way is you want to just bring your needle up through the center of that circle, and you will wrap your yarn once around the tip of your needle, and this way was a little bit harder for me to do. My fingers didn't want to work the best the day I was working on this project. But once you have that wrapped, you just go right back down in the center of your circle. You need to kind of hold your extra length of thread and just pull that through, and that just makes a knot on your pattern. The second method for creating a French knot is the way that I learned how to do it. This is how my mama taught me. Again, you just pull your needle up through the center of your circle, make a loop, and then just stick your needle right back down in the center of that loop and the circle, and just pull it until you have your knot. That way is a little bit easier for me, but if you do use the method where you wrap it around your needle, you can wrap it a couple of times and get a much larger French knot. The next stitch is the back stitch, and this one is very simple and easy to learn. You just want to start at the beginning of your line on the particular section that you are working on your pattern. Just come up and go down, and then you will want to come up and leave a gap in between your stitches, and then go back at the ending of your first stitch. I hope that makes sense. You guys can hopefully see that better here on the video. You just want to continue doing that until you have your entire line filled in. So you just come up, and then you will go back down at the end of your last stitch and just fill in that gap. And sometimes when you are working on your project, your thread will get a little bit twisted. So what I like to do, if that happens, and you can tell because your thread won't look quite right when you are pulling your needle through, I like to just hold up my project and let that needle kind of unravel and untwist my thread, and then you are ready to continue working on your project. Now you have a couple of different options to tie off your thread on the back side of your project. One, you just simply tie a knot and try to get your knot as close to your fabric as possible so you don't have any really long threads that are sticking out on the back side. So you just knot that, and then you just cut off your excess piece of thread. That one is really simple. That's usually the way that I like to tie off my yarn, but you can also do another method, and this one makes it look just a little bit neater, but you can't do that with some of the stitches, this method anyway. But you just want to take your needle and thread and just go under your stitches a couple of times and just pull that really tight and just get a knot around the stitches that are there on the back side of your project, and just trim off that excess thread. This one you have to be a little bit more careful with and make sure that you do have that pulled nice and tight before you trim it off. Here's my butterfly all finished. All I have to do now is wash my fabric just to remove my pattern lines, and this is ready to make into a pillow or a wall hanging, whatever I want it to be. I learned how to do hand embroidery a long time ago, and my husband is calling. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned something new, or maybe this is just a refresher for you. If you have been doing embroidery for a long time, let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading those and hearing from my viewers. Please give today's video a thumbs up, and I hope you will consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you in the next one.